Hi, I am Bill Simmons with the Phoenix Theater Cultural Center in downtown Indianapolis. And today I'm getting to talk to my friend Josh Coomer, who is an equity actor. And he is playing with Jolene Mentink Moffatt on the Phoenix Theater Russell stage in a production called Bakersfield Mist by a friend of mine, the playwright Stephen Sachs. So, how are you, Josh?
Doing well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So as we record this, you're already well into performances of Bakersfield Mist. Tell us a little bit about the show and, getting to play Lionel.
Yeah, it's we're already, approaching our third and or fourth and final weekend, which is so strange. Maybe it always happens now like this, but the rehearsal periods felt short and we were getting a little panicky, and then that weird Thanksgiving weekend is a blur, and now we're already into our third and or last weekend. I keep saying third. It's been wonderful. It's been really, really great to work with Jolene again, particularly because when we've worked together before, we haven't had a lot of just one-on-one interaction. Rancho Mirage, in fact, Rancho Mirage, I barely knew her, and I would say that we made eye contact a couple of times. But we really didn't have too much character interaction. And then, of course, Acid Dolphin, there was all kinds of wacky stuff happening. So this is just really interesting to look into someone's eyes and really just, play off each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned Rancho Mirage because I got to be an actor with you and Jolene in that production, which was it was in the tiny little Basile stage in the old building, and there were 6 actors who were in most of the show. And then there was a 7th actor who played the teenage babysitter who shows up. And at one point, there's like 7 of us on that tiny little Basile stage. And we were supposed to be like this big, massive home in Rancho Mirage, California.
Right.
But yeah, you also mentioned the world premiere of Tom Horan's Acid Dolphin Experiment. And I got to direct you and Jolene in that company, which was awesome. I still tell people that is among my favorite directing experiences because it was such a massive undertaking. And it was like, I don't think we all realize how big a show it was, how much it demanded of you all. And the playwright, Tom Horan, who is our playwright in residence, was rewriting the play. Not a lot of rewrites, but we really didn't have the end quite figured out when we went into rehearsals. Right. And you and Jolene talked to me a little bit about, so the 48 hours before we tech the show, that's where you add in all the technical elements. Tom brought a scene between your character, John C. Lilly, who's based on a true character, and Burgess Meredith, who was a good friend of his, the actor from Rocky. And Jolene played Burgess Meredith, which I think is awesome.
Yes, who of course for me will always be the Penguin. That's just how I grew up with. I knew who that man was as the Penguin on Batman.
Right, from the 60s version of Batman.
Yeah, and
TV
growing
show.
up in the 70s watching reruns of that.
Yeah.
That's just what I thought he was. Yeah, I had forgotten the timeline of that scene like you just said, but man, by that point I was game for anything. But yeah, I mean, memorizing something quickly is difficult, and then having that feeling of solidity beneath your memorization, like it's not just almost memorized, but really there. That was, but that play though, I thought the whole wackadoodle surroundings of how it came together made sense for the play.
Yeah,
I'd never done anything like that before. I haven't done anything like it since. And yeah, I kept trying to tell myself, this is what when you get a new play that's workshopping, this is what happens sometimes. You're dealing with new things every day, and you just kind of have to roll with it. So I kind of just looked at it that way, like I have to do this no matter what. And we did it.
Yeah, it really, I really, that was probably one of the most difficult shows for me to direct, but ultimately it was one of the most rewarding because you 5 actors just really launched yourselves fully into it. So it was you and Jolene, Lauren Brigham, Chelsea Stauffer, and Michael Hosp. Right. And what was interesting is it felt like a bigger company making that play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that I mean, it was I love working with all those people and you too, of course, but and that it was so strange to be in that weird aquarium-like set.
Yes.
The blue and the curved lines, and I had never done a part quite that big. That not just in terms of lines, but really this whole thing's coming out of my brain, and so that was quite daunting. But if I could go back and start the whole thing over, I think I'd try to give ourselves one more week of rehearsal. But
yeah, and
because I didn't really feel, I personally for myself didn't feel like I had caught my stride until towards the second weekend of the show.
Yeah, that's probably true. As a director, I always obviously see the opening performance and the dress rehearsals that lead up to it and the final performance. And I also try to get back to a show if I can, somewhere in the midpoint of the run. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing that show, I think seeing closing, but I know I saw it later in the run, and it grew a lot. You company of actors really had it well in hand when I saw it again. I actually thought it was in pretty good shape when we opened, and it was kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those things, like I wasn't embarrassed or just horrified that we were opening, but I just knew that, there were just moments that I hadn't yet fully clicked together, and there were just those scenes that maybe the audience wouldn't know it, but I knew I was working harder in those moments, and was trying to think of other things as well. But man, that show really has stuck with me. That's one of the few. I'd take a stab at that again any day.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting show. I wonder if we could bring that back in another venue. I'm sure I must have seen it later in the run, because I remember the scene. So for those people who are watching this, we did a play, Acid Dolphin Experiment. It was about John C. Lilly, who was a scientist, and he was on the front, at the leading edge of acid, dropping acid as I guess a form of like therapy, right? Mm-hmm. And then he also was interested in dolphin research, and at some point he started combining his love of acid trips with his love for dolphin research and giving acid to his dolphins. So there was a scene though where you take acid your character takes acid for the first time, and Jolene is your guy, right? And yes. I remember watching that later in the run, and it was so good. She was so good at what she was doing, and we had this great projection screen that I think Tom Horan actually did the video work with our lighting person or something like that, and it was sort of like dye being injected into this water, and that was what's gone beyond, and it was really something. Did Laura Glover light that show? Am I remembering that right?
Yes, I believe so. And I didn't really know her well at the time, but I think that was her. And just since you mentioned that scene, if you can, this happened to be like
that's
a picture of that moment.
That's one of my favorite photographs of you two.
Yeah, I love that picture.
Yeah, that's a show. I think that's a show we could probably revisit. Yeah. So Ransom Mirage, was that your first production at the Phoenix as an actor?
Yes, my first Phoenix, my first Indianapolis production. I had just moved back to the state the year before in 2012. So yes, that was my first big play, and I was meeting everyone for the first time, and I had the day job. Well, I still do it, I guess. But so that was just knowing that the Phoenix was the one place I could go and rehearse at night, rehearse on weekends, still make other parts of my life work. That was really, I'm grateful for that, and still am.
So what are some of the other productions you've done at the Phoenix? I remember a lot of them, but for our people watching.
Well, since you're in front of me, we've done the Rancho, the Acid, and North of the Boulevard, which was my second play.
Yeah.
And my first on the main stage at the old church. Another really terrific. I don't think I've ever done anything like that or before or since. Just that kind of play, that kind of language, that kind of guy. I really liked that one a lot.
That was I had a really good time working with you on that, and Ben Rose was in that show, and then I think it was one of the last times Rich Komanek was on a stage before he passed.
Yes, I don't know about the first, last time or not, but that was my one and only time working with them, and the legends were all true.
Oh yeah, sorry, my dogs are barking. It's walking. It's time for people to walk dogs to the neighborhood. They're going to let us know every time a dog goes by my house.
That's all right. I probably have
Yeah,
cats begging to get in.
that is right. Yeah, Rich left us with a lot of stories from that project, as I recall.
Yes, yes. He told stories. He did things that have become stories,
Yeah.
things I'll never forget.
Yes, he's done things that now I'm almost certain um, would get you fired now, finally, from our rehearsal process.
Oh, no doubt. We won't even go into the details, but
No,
there was
no.
one particular moment for sure that would not
Yes.
fly at all today.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
that it flew then, but it was still a different. It was six whatever years ago. So,
Yeah, it was. It was like a different era in the theater. It's like Greeks. It's like Greeks invented theater and up till the pandemic, and now there's a new thing that there'll be post-pandemic theater
yes, yes,
because yeah, stuff that we witnessed on that production with that particular actor, and I think we probably would have been more uncomfortable if our stage manager, Chelsea Stauffer, hadn't handled it so well.
right.
Which was really interesting to see somebody who was 30 years younger than the problem child in the cast
Yeah,
really treating being like the mom in the room, or the parent in the room, which is like, okay, that stops. We're not doing that anymore.
right. Yes, and then you still had to sit with them back in the dressing room, and
Yes.
oh well. It
Yeah.
was another learning experience. I just
But a
no
really
matter
good
what, you have
play.
to say to yourself, this is what I've got. So
Yeah.
make it work.
Yeah. But it was a very good play. And I too had not played a part like that. And felt very fortunate to be able to get that material. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what other projects have you worked on at the Phoenix that you're, particularly fond of?
Um, well, I can. There are only seven from the old place. The place. So we've already talked about three. We also had Pulp, which was just a great fun to work on that genre. I like sci-fi and reading and all that. So to actually be kind of inside that world was really exciting.
Yeah.
An Act of God was a bizarre one with the angels and Scott Greenwell was God. That was my last one. And what am I missing? Oh, Peter and the Starcatcher, which was interesting
Oh
that Peter and the
yeah.
Starcatcher and Act of God were like the two more recent Broadway shows.
Right.
Everything else I had done were either the N. I'm going to get those letters wrong. NPN and
Oh,
NPN.
National New Play Network,
Thank
NNPN.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were either that or they were still regional uh, premieres or whatever. Those last two though were the kind of like the bigger name, more recognizable titles.
Yeah, you've gotten to that's a great opportunity. You've gotten to do scripts that are fresh from New York. And then you've been involved in two National New Play Network rolling world premieres because Rancho Mirage was a Stephen Dietz play that rolled. There were at least three theaters in the NNPN producing that script in the same season. And it was weird because I think it just so happened it was us, the only outside of DC, and I think Curious Theater out of Denver were all doing it. Oh, actually, there was a fourth theater. There was the theater out of Boston. I forget what that theater is called. And they were like bing, 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 which usually rolling world premieres are kind of stretched out over like a 12-month window. And all four of those rolls happened between like September 1 and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, I almost thought it was almost every other weekend, I think, because I don't remember. Well, I know Stephen Dietz came to see our show. I don't know if he made it the other shows or not.
Yeah.
And then Pulp was also a world rolling premiere.
Yeah. Joe Zettelmeyer, who's out of the Ann Arbor area. They that script rolled. I don't know which theater up in the Ann Arbor area ended up doing it up there. Maybe it was Performance Network, which I don't think exists anymore. Austin. I wonder who the third theater was. Yeah, so you've gotten to, that's really exciting that you've got, because I'm very proud of our relationship with the National New Play Network. I found out recently that we hold the record for participating in the most rolling world premiere productions, like us, like hands down. And there are some years I can remember Brian, my predecessor, we were in like maybe 3 shows that season were part of the National New Play Network. That's kind of amazing because there are theaters in the network who've actually never participated in a rolling world premiere. And I think the Phoenix is up to like maybe up almost like around between maybe a dozen and
Wow.
15 rolling world premiere productions. So
And I know the Stephen D. I know he's been produced in town, not just at Phoenix, but also at IRT in the past as
yeah.
well. So he's a kind of recognizable name. I mean, I went to college, in college, Lonely Planet, his two-man show is still one of my favorites.
What show's that?
Lonely Planet.
Oh yeah. I
I
forgot
always
that.
wanted to be in that. I did scene work and stuff, but never actually got to do the show. I think I'm way
Oh
too old for that now.
yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things in my rearview mirror too. I'm like, oh, well, I'll never get to do that. I heard a statistic once that Stephen Dietz was the most produced playwright in the living playwright in the United States at one point. I don't know if that's still the case. I feel like maybe he got bypassed by somebody, but
Yeah.
because his
Well,
plays are both like I did on Clover Road, which is about um, deprogramming somebody who's been involved in a cult, and very much a suspense thriller. Rancho Mirage was a comedy with dramatic elements, and then he does those Sherlock Holmes adaptations,
I didn't know that.
one of those magic baseball cards. I think Jackie and Me about Jackie Robinson is a magic baseball card story. He's done that's his adaptation. So it explains why he's so
Yeah.
well produced.
Very diverse.
So let's talk about Bakersfield Mist.
Yeah.
We still got some time. So tell us a little bit about the show, and for those people who haven't seen it, why they should come.
Well, so if you have any interest in art at all, I think that just any kind of art, you will be interested in this because it gives you a little bit of the behind the scenes element of it. I am by no means an expert on paintings or art of that kind, but I'm, familiar with Jackson Pollock and those kind of things. So for me, I just like saying some of those words because it makes me feel so much smarter than I am. But
I think I saw the documentary it's based on, who the F is Jackson Pollock, and I had heard the guy who is interviewed in the documentary. I'd heard him on another program, and when I saw you doing Lionel, that man's name is Thomas Hoving, and he was a curator at one of the big museums in New York, and he is brought into it's a documentary, and this woman indeed thought she bought a Jackson Pollock for $5. When I saw the documentary and then I saw your character of Lionel, I actually thought you were doing a really remarkable job of inhabiting that kind of a human being. I didn't think you were playing Thomas Hoving. I could see inspiration of Thomas Hoving, but in terms of like what you were speaking about and how you were speaking about it, and I think it's a really good performance, Josh.
Thank you.
Really, there are times where I stop, a lot of times I'm not thinking about watching Josh Coomer act. I'm actually watching the story unfold.
Thank you for saying that. And I do think that as this play is going on now for three weekends, Jolene and I have definitely, it's just the two of us, so we're constantly checking in. We know what's going on with each other on stage. And I really do feel like the last couple shows, especially, we have been really on fire. Like it just feels so natural, and though there are technical aspects that you kind of have to worry about and think about, it just really feels like this give and take conversation. Two people whose stakes are both very high, and I think that helps too. That like what you said about the real guy from the documentary. I'm nowhere near his age for starters, but I do, for him, that's his world, that's his life, that's his reputation, and he does know what he's talking about. So the stakes there were very high, and once that started to click in, where it wasn't just about this woman who wanted this to happen, but this guy also needs something to happen. I don't know. That just kind of opened things up and made it easier to play. And I'm not making sense, but
no, you're making perfect sense, because it really is. It speaks to me, and I teach acting, the craft of acting, which is people. You and Jolene are playing really big stakes. Like, it is indeed your reputation, which for this character is his life. I mean, everything else has fallen by the wayside. except this one thing that is all encompassing to him, which is art.
Yeah.
And so therefore anything related to art would be really huge stakes. And she needs to get this thing authenticated to, well, for one thing, for the value of the painting, if it's a true Pollock. And the other, there's to me there's a metaphor there for the woman's son, that
Yes.
by getting this painting authenticated, she's authenticating that young man's life. And I think that's, so her stakes are equally huge. And for me, it should be for everybody. That's where great theater happens on the stage, right? Is two characters fighting for what are huge stakes. And then there's conflict. There's where the conflict happens. So I think, I saw it on Tech Sunday, where we had all the technical elements in before we had an audience, and then I saw it on the Saturday night of the opening weekend, and I will be going back to the closing matinee. But I saw growth then. And here's a testament to you too. I was at the theater on Sunday because we just did Accessibility Sunday with our American Sign Language interpreters and our audio describer. And there was a woman who stopped me in the lobby who had been at the show Friday night and brought another friend to the show Saturday. Like she saw it 48 hours after witnessing the first time. She was already back.
That's so good to hear. Because I do think it's not your typical comedy. It's not, it's not a farce by any means, but I do think it has to do with that Constance talked to you about it as well on her chat about these slightly bigger than life characters. And I think it lends itself to that, because the language, if you just try to read it, is, I don't know, Chekhovian. No, that's the bad example. Chekhov, he's even bigger. What am I saying? But like that real straightforward, serious thing. I mean, the language is ridiculous, but you start to add in the theatricality of it and the world that I think these two people would still talk like that no matter what. She is this Maud the Broad, this bigger than life character, and he speaks in these adjectives that no one really speaks like that unless
except for Thomas Hope. I think the character and that's why I think I think it works so well, because I believe these two characters live off the stage, and I believe if these were two real humans, I think what happens in the play could actually happen in real life. Like obviously there's a fight scene and there's knives and guns and
bowling pins
all over the stage, which is not a spoiler because ultimately the play is it a Pollock or not? But the fireworks that ensue, it actually, to some degree, I actually think it's plausible. It's not a farce. It's not a noises off. It's not like, oh, that could not possibly happen. Like you could not have that stuff going on behind the stage while a play is going on in front of the audience. Eventually, the audience up front of that's going to get wise to it, right? That like, oh, all hell's breaking loose back there. And so the director Constance Macy and I did an interview a couple of weeks back, and what really struck me about that interview was how invested she was in the material. And as an artistic director, I think that's what you're looking for is a director that connects with the material and not just taking the directing job, not just taking it as a paying gig, but that it really speaks to her. And when she was talking about it and talking about you and talking about Jolene and talking about the other artists involved in the project, there's just a real effervescence about it when Constance talks about it. And that to me is all over the show, because this show in the hands of a lesser director could be very static. She could have you at a Formica table talking, right? And you're orbiting around each other in that tiny little trailer, yet it doesn't seem claustrophobic, but yet it seems like two hungry tigers in a cage fighting over the same.
Yes, I fully agree with that. I mean, because we shift around to the kitchen, to the living room, to the middle. It feels very organic, and the play has these, even though it's one long scene, of course, it has its moments and its chunks where we get a bit of a breather, or that's done. Now, next subject, or what,
it feels like movements of a symphony.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you said that, because another thing Julie and I have just mentioned chatting, we get off stage and we're like, how'd that feel? And it feels, the rhythm of it really has settled into us. Even if we mess up a word or whatever, there's still this chugga 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 rhythm that kind of, once you start, you can't stop. And it's really musical. It's very, if when it feels right or wrong. And maybe that's just because it's two people and you don't have that break, and you don't get a third person or more to come in and change something up, or you don't get any time off stage. But it's really, really exciting to kind of just have to make those moments happen in the light.
Well, yeah. I mean, having been in two-person shows, sometimes they work really well if your partner is going toe to toe with you, and then sometimes it's like you can feel like you're carrying a heavier pail of water than they are. And so I my intuition tells me that it's two actors who really trust the other person. They trust the world that the director has given them. They're trusting the play, because I do think Stephen Sachs has written a really strong play, and it explains why it premiered in 2013 at his theater, the Fountain Theater in LA, and why it's had a West End production with Kathleen Turner, and it's being done maybe in the Czech Republic right now, or Romania or something like that. It's being done somewhere in Eastern Europe. I think this play is going to be around for a long time because I think it's structured really well. But it's very clear to me that you and Jolene trust one another. You trust the world that Constance has created around you, and it's really holding up really well.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'd stay on stage with her all the time if I could. Sure.
Yeah. I think that's a common refrain. Well, Josh, this has been lovely. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying the production, because it's a delight to watch you. And for those people who are watching this and there's still time to see the show, I will be there at the final Sunday matinee, which is coming up on December 19th. And then we'll be taking a little break and coming back with Lovebird. So, but it's just been a delight, Josh, having you back at the Phoenix, and you've got a production in the new facility under your belt.
Yes. It's really cool that, it feels like home. It feels like it should.
Good.
I'm looking forward, I hope, in the future, when things get relatively back to normal, getting in that middle space, because I love studio spaces. But it's so intimate. It just feels really good. That set fits, and the audiences are with us.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's really a nice production. The whole show feels it's. I really feel like this production, we've figured out how to produce in the Livia and Steve Russell main stage, a two-person show. We did it with Agitators before the pandemic shut us down. That show was also in the zone. Like, it was a two-actor show. The production we had felt like it fit the space. They were filling the house with the work. Michael Burkett directed that. And this show feels like a really good follow-up to that two-hander. So no, I'm really proud of it. And I'm like you, I really want to get back into the Frank and Katrina Basile stage, because I just think that's the jewel box of the city, that 40 by 40 configurable studio theater. And down the road, I'm actually thinking about starting to look at some material to self-produce, not to act in, but direct. Or so that's something I'd like to start nurturing and working with theater artists in town. Of like, hey, here's a play I really wanted to do, actually putting together an independent production, and then almost like renting out the Basile.
Sure.
I think that could be a great opportunity to get that space utilized more frequently.
I wonder what Tom Horan's working on.
Tom and I talked about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I think he said he's writing a lot of fiction right now. But I know Tom likes. He's very much his playwriting. I think he's in a sweet spot when he's writing historical events.
Right.
I think he's just waiting for the right inspiration. So if you have an idea for him, that's what Tom and I are. I was like, I just don't have an idea yet. And I'm like, I need to come up with an idea so you can write something for me. So yeah.
Right. I'm trying to think of how you can tie in, like the theme. He's so diverse himself with his subject matter. So yeah. What would he? Okay, COVID. Obviously, he needs to write something to do with diseases and viruses.
Maybe we should pull acid dolphin out of mothballs and do a workshop, a play development process where we get it cut a little bit, because it needs to be a little tighter than it was. And he knew that when we went in tech weekend. He said, I can see the cuts you suggested now. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
they're not getting cut now, dude, because we got money for 48 hours. So there ain't not major cuts. So yeah.
Yes, I'm with you. I look forward to whatever comes around in the future.
All right. Well, enjoy the heck out of the last few
Thank you.
performances, and I will be there to usher you out.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
See you, man.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.